Katia, thank you so much for coming today. It's first of all so wonderful, of course, to see you. It's Thursday, March 5th, 2020, and this is the wonderful CG Talk with Katia Beauchamp, who is a co-founder and CEO of Birchbox. And I'll say a little bit more about her in just a moment. Just a reminder of the format. After my introduction, Katia will talk for 20-25 minutes about conscious leadership and how they've implemented it at Birchbox and what they've learned about it. And then we'll do Q&A and we'll go for an hour. And I just want to remind everyone in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, if there's any help you need, please get in touch. Remember our mission, you never have to walk alone, whether it's about this or anything else. Okay, so let's get started. Let me just give you a brief background. Many of you know Katia or know her by name anyway and know Birchbox. She co-founded the company in 2010, driven by a fascination with the beauty industry and kind of thinking about the business dynamics of it and the opportunity to kind of redefine how people shop and discover beauty online. You know, Katia, I think you and I talked about this at one point, but back in 1999, when I was running Creative Good, we were doing a lot of work with kind of first generation online beauty. And P&G famously spent a lot of money building this reflect.com where you could completely customize every little thing, and it crashed. But it was a big challenge, and people were for a long time willing only to do replenishment of products they already trusted. And what you did, I think, is really discover a new model, and it's now we're 10 years later, but that was pretty revolutionary what Birchbox did by sending people products, every month. They were one of the first to do that, personalized samples. They have more than 2.5 million active customers, 500 beauty and grooming brand partners, 4 countries operations, and also retail in select Walgreens locations. And when we met in Chicago in the fall, there was a big Walgreens right there that had a huge Birchbox section of the store. Katia's got an MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA in International Studies from Vassar. She actually worked in finance prior to B School in like structured finance. Oh my God. Early 90s, I was doing some structured finance work at Moody's Investor Service. Learning about the tranches of mortgage-backed securities. She's gotten a lot of accolades. I'm going to say a few more things, and then we'll let her talk. Advertising Age Women to Watch, CEW Achievers Award, Fortune 40 Under 40, Inc. 30 Under 30. Are you getting younger? Is that what's happening? Are you going to get the 20 Under 20 list soon?
That's actually what I'm here to teach you about, is how to reverse aging.
Excellent, excellent. YMA's Entrepreneur of the Year. Are you an EIR at Harvard Business School, which is pretty cool. Native Texan. She now lives in New York with all the rest of the many millions here, including her husband and 4 children. Okay, so with that, you've been embracing this concept of conscious leadership, Katia, and everyone's excited to hear about it. So walk us through. Oh, someone just wrote, "Go Texas." Yeah, Texas. All right, so yeah, tell us about what you've learned about this.
Yeah, so I will say that I have many different times of my life looked at having different frameworks and coaches, and this is the one for me that has just really changed my whole life. It hasn't just been work, and that's what was kind of told to me when I went down the path. So the way I found this framework was, first and foremost, I think I was probably looking for something like this because I was trying to tap into something. So I shared my screen. Can you see it, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I had realized. Every couple years at Birchbox, I was like having epiphanies about things that were really exciting me about this experience around entrepreneurship. But what I kept coming back to was I was really obsessed with the ability to invent reality, and how, I mean, to put it in very blunt terms, like how average I was, like, a good person, a smart person, sure, but like by no means exceptional. And that I had the impact with a very talented team on an entire industry, was able to really go against what everyone said was possible, that consumers would never pay for samples, because we were told that so many times. We were told by so many brands they would never work with us. And all of a sudden, I just kept seeing that, you know, we were redefining the option set in the market for consumers, for the industry, and then also totally defining these career opportunities and career trajectories for the team and for people who were coming through the company. And I was just obsessed. I was like, wow, this feeling that, you know, someone like me, who, again, capable but not remarkable, can have this experience of inventing reality. I just became very enthralled and obsessed. And what I'd say is, when I was in that mindset, I was like electric with excitement about the company. I felt like everything was possible. I just felt like I was in what I think we've all heard referred to as my zone of genius, you know, because I really was able to suspend disbelief. And I saw how powerful it was to be able to kind of redefine possibility for myself and for my team and for the market. But I wasn't always in that mindset. And I didn't understand like what was getting me there, what was throwing me back, but especially when things got really hard, like, you know, in the first few years at Birchbox, it was really hard. I was very unhappy. But you could arguably say we just had pure tailwind, you know, in looking back. But when I first had a headwind and I started experiencing like just kind of more macro changes in the opportunity, I couldn't find my way back to feeling this power that I knew was like a mindset. You know, I knew that in many ways there was no change in reality. So that's kind of the backdrop about what I would call me looking or being curious about an ability to tap into my power in a more like directed way. And so I found this concept with an entrepreneur who I then asked to join the board, and who eventually then introduced me to his executive coach, who practices this conscious leadership. And it was just this very simple concept around locating yourself and recognizing that you have an ability to choose the way that you see the world. And that the first step in that is trying to define in a very simple way where you are. Like what lens are you putting over the situation? What lens are you putting over a problem? And the concept that conscious leadership refers to, I hope many of you watched the video, because if you didn't, then it will be more useful to you after this conversation too, to watch the video about locating yourself and where are you. But the idea, like, are you above the line, are you below the line? And the very simple way that it's defined as what the difference is when you're above the line, you're in the mindset that life is happening by you, that you have so much agency, that you're really open to possibility. You are even open to reframing something that feels hard as like finding ways to laugh at it, finding ways to be playful with it, finding ways to see it as an ally. And when you're below the line, you perceive things as threats. You perceive yourself as kind of not having power, not having agency. Things are happening to you. And you see the world in more black and whites of like, something is wrong, or someone is wrong, or someone is wronging you, and you are right. And there's kind of this truth in it, right? Where you are upset and you are right and someone is wrong. So this framework just, you know, was something that I found, and initially I was intrigued by it because it related to this idea of like tapping into this possibility, because I had the vocabulary, or in my mind, I kept talking to myself and eventually to the team about the potential to invent reality. And the things I would say to the team is, you have the, like, what it means to invent reality is that you have the ability to invent the game you're playing, what the game board looks like, what all the pieces are, and what does it mean to win? You know, you get to actually define how to win the game, and you can stack the deck, right? You can decide that like winning is like two little steps away. You only have to roll a 3. And I was trying to like explain that to the team when all of this kind of came to me, and I realized, wow, this is an even more powerful way of thinking about agency versus kind of living at someone else's power as a victim. And it just really woke me up to, you know, what the kind of life I wanted to live in general at work, but also just in general. And so I decided I wanted to practice it, because like anything else, you really have to practice. And it took a long time, and I've been practicing it for a couple of years, and I still feel like there's so much to learn about how to shift. Basically, the game is to locate yourself and then to shift above the line. And so I think, you know, probably clear that the goal is to be living life more above the line, because that's where you find joy and possibility, and you don't see as much friction in all the situations that we encounter in the day. But it's so natural to be below the line that you have to learn how to consciously shift in a way that takes a ton of practice. And so I've been spending a lot of time doing that and talking to the team about it and using some of the language that I was going to share here.
Cool.
Shall we keep going?
Yes. Are you going to, and maybe you're going to address this, like what were some of the obstacles for you to really, or what are the things that still come up?
Okay, so I'll give an example. So I felt like in moments when I guess I felt more powerful, or I felt more like I was in control of the situation, that's when I was really easily able to kind of live above the line or feel like I had agency and power. But in moments when external things are happening, really natural for me to feel like the victim. So when it became really, like when I was told, like, you have to, you know, suddenly we're not going to give you any more capital for this company, you have to like make a different plan or sell the company, I felt, you know, really like the victim, like really like I was being told to, you know, suddenly, like with no warning, completely change the way we're operating the business. And I lived for a long time with so much resentment and anger, and like something wrong happened to me, something bad happened to me, something that I couldn't control. And one of the most powerful things has been being able to reflect on those moments and have gratitude for them. And reflect and say like, wow, I have learned so much from those experiences. I'm so grateful that I got to experience that, because I feel so much more equipped to lead a company. And then with that mindset, how can I be grateful in the moment for things that would once occur to me as being friction or awful or, you know, the worst, the end, right? Yeah. And instead of seeing them that way, knowing that I am going to be grateful for that, bring the gratitude and the appreciation and the curiosity about how this is going to like serve me into the actual time that it's happening.
Yeah.
Right?
That's powerful.
And it is, it's really powerful, because you just find yourself smiling a lot. You find yourself like truly seeing the joy in the journey, this like concept that we've all been talking about, because you're fully present, appreciating the actual journey when it's happening instead of the hindsight of a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that has just been such a rewarding way to start living life. Again, no one's perfect. It's not that I'm always like, I'm so grateful to you for like really messing up my day or really like throwing a wrench in a plan I have. So of course it's not, you know, 100% of the time, but I found that after like 6 months of pretty diligent practicing, like it's an addiction, right? You're like, why wouldn't I want to always be above the line, right? It feels so right as a human to know that you're powerful and that you have agency. It
Yeah.
feels true, and it feels it just feels like you're finally like in your body
Yeah.
all the time.
That's great. What I have more questions, and I'm sure people listening will do as well, but do you have more you want to say about sort of how you implemented this or what you did with the team, or tell me how you're thinking about it?
So the way I started implementing it was I shared what I shared with all of you, which is the videos, and I asked my team to watch them and to watch them a few times.
Yeah.
And then I shared, I started doing this exercise with my team, which is like first, like locate yourself. So starting our executive team meetings by asking people where they are, and really, you know, are you above the line, are you below the line, and asking these questions. So if you're above the line, the kind of statements that you're making are, you know, you're basically in this different mindset. You're taking like responsibility, and you're approaching a situation like there is a win for all. Like you're sure there's a win for all. So you're asking questions like, what can I learn from this situation? Your mind immediately goes to those thoughts and ideas. When you think of something being really awful or really hard or really insurmountable, you let yourself play with the concept, how is the opposite of my story true? So kind of like asking these questions and practicing, and I'm constantly asking my team when they come to me, telling me, you know, with very certainty, like, we cannot do X. Like, okay, well, let's take a step back. Is that a fact or a story, first of all? Like, and then let's play. Let's like, you're feeling really defeated by, you know, the ask to do this. What if like the opposite of your story on why we can't is true? Let's like play with this concept of opposite and extremes, because you're in an extreme right now of I can't. Let's like play. It's an extreme. That's not true. That's a feeling, right? And so that's something that then permeates just a normal conversation when you're talking to somebody. How is the opposite of your story true? And helping people recognize when they're below the line. So when they're saying things like should, I really try to talk about, you know, that. When they're feeling like there's a truth, there's like a one side, there's a fact here, or feeling like, again, the victim, like you made me feel, you know, just trying to help people recognize their power and not just give it up so easily.
Yeah.
Right? And so first introducing it and using it at the beginning of the executive meetings, but then just using the language all the time in meetings with everybody and touch bases. And I try to make it really tangible so you don't have to be someone who's like following all of this and looking at this all the time, but where I'm asking you something and it's useful, it makes sense. So even somebody who I might not work directly with, I still might ask them like, okay, well, let's play like a game. What if the opposite of your story right now is true? Like, what would that look like? So I still might use the same tools, even if we haven't been through it together in a more detailed way.
Yeah. And when did you start using this in the company, or when did you start adopting it? Was it
2 years ago for me? And probably I didn't feel comfortable, you know, just doing it right away for the first maybe 9 months. And then I brought in my coach to help like the team get introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you find was the acceptance or resistance like? Was it uneven? Some people were really open to it and others much more resistant, or what was that?
I think that's natural, and it takes trying to like explore it from many different angles to get people comfortable. So the first introduction being from my coach was helpful because he was so used to having people, some people that were like me, like just looking for something to help them have a tool to invent reality all the time. And some people who hadn't really tapped into that power before and were going to be like naturally more skeptical of life happening by you versus to you. So, you know, it's not something that you can conquer in like 1 hour. Like it's like a debate is what I found. And engaging in the debate and letting people really ask the questions and push on it. But ultimately, it was pretty easy to get people to want it, right? Because once you start to like talk about, you know, the two different places or ways to see the exact same situation,
Yeah.
I think it's natural as humans to want to feel powerful, right?
Yeah.
Want to feel like you have agency and control. Not to control a specific outcome, but control of how you see things.
Right. Which is
So
very stoic, by the way.
attractive.
This is both influenced, it's got to be, by both Stoicism and Buddhism. I don't know if you've explored
I don't
that.
know. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like now that I'm looking for it, I'm finding it in so many places, and I'm hearing like people just call it different things, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think ultimately it's really about staying present and in your body, because when you're present and in your body, you have all of your tools, all of your faculties to approach anything, and things don't feel dramatic.
Yeah.
When you're afraid, the reason you're afraid is because you're thinking of the past and you're projecting it on the future.
Yeah.
So when you're below the line, it's a fear. And it's when you're thinking about the past and projecting the future, you know, there's some percentage of you that's not here.
Yeah.
Right? You're already deciding what's going to happen. And frankly, you're creating that reality. That's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy by having this projection of your future. And instead, being present with something and recognizing that, you know, the outcome is still unknown. At this moment, there's no outcome. At the moment, you're just frustrated. At the moment, you're feeling scared. You're feeling like something's new, but there's no fact of outcome yet.
Right.
Right. So if you can stay in your body and stay in the moment, you just have such a better opportunity to create the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
You have all of you to think through it.
Yeah. You know, Katia, one of the things, let me tell you what I'm thinking about, and tell me if this is true. I'm guessing that to be able to embrace above the line, that you in particular, but also anyone who does this, has to come to terms with any degree of self-hatred that they have, and to get over that. Is that true? Or tell me about your experience.
I mean, yeah, you definitely can't. It's the same thing. If you're hating yourself, it's for the past, right? If you're reliving mistakes, all of my mistakes, then mean things venture capitalists have said to me about being dumb or ill-equipped, and great things, like reliving those things and holding on to those things is taking your energy away. It's like it was described to me as, it's like you're holding on to like this burning hot coal. Imagine that, like while you're trying to like problem solve something hard, like you're but you're holding it. Like you could just stop it.
Yeah.
Right? You could just be like, you know, I'm not going to hold on to this anymore. That's a story. That's not a fact. And having compassion for yourself is a really big part of this.
Yeah.
I'd also say that one of the powerful things that I say to myself, because it's been said to me now over and over again through this practice, is you are not your thoughts. And I know that's really weird.
It's true. It's so important.
Yeah, you are not your thoughts. And trying to recognize, like, these are thoughts, these are fears, these are hard wires of our brain that we've trained our brain to, you know, say these things to ourselves, and they're not who you are.
Right.
You know, so it's like I said, it's not something that happens instantly. I think being interested and curious about it and practicing it, though, it is something that is natural to become addicted to and easy to become good at.
Yeah.
If you practice, because it's like anything else, it's just you hardwire your brain to start thinking differently. And when I find myself below the line for, like, you know, days, it's not that you don't dip in and out, but for like a while, I get so curious. I really have tools now to get so curious about why am I giving away this power and agency, and why am I accepting, like, the thing that I'm upset about, I just decided that that's true. Like, where is the win for all is where my head starts to go. And literally, once you really are asking those questions, where's the win for all? You know, what am I going to learn from this? How is this going to serve me? You're above the line. Like, all of your optimism about potential outcomes and this being something that could lead to good that's it. That's like once you let yourself not feel certain you're going to get some outcome that you picture as perfection, but certain that there is value here for you as a person.
You know, when people end up in a negative place, like the below the line as you're describing, one of the most common things to happen is to actually then beat themselves up about that, right? So you're in this kind of vicious circle where you're feeling negative or some level of self-hatred, or you're believing something that some stupid venture capitalist told you, or, you know, or the world told you in some other way. I mean, you know, I think this is particularly powerful coming from you as a woman, as a Latina, you know, who, you know, there aren't that many entrepreneurs in the internet world who look like you. And you're, you know, changing that, and you're deciding not to listen to some of those voices, whether they're internal or external. But one of the things that many people get, oh, like then they start beating themselves up. I'm below the line, you know what I mean? And then it's, you know, you get stuck. And I'm touched that you have found a way to say, wait a minute, what? You know?
No, I mean, you definitely beat yourself up when you go there, because you're like, I'm better than this. And, you know, you do have to be kind to yourself. And I know we all have different exercises about how to be kind to yourself, but a lot of, you know, being kind to yourself is taking the time to take it seriously.
Yeah. And to take yourself seriously, right?
Like when you're letting those when you're sourcing your value externally, when you're letting those voices actually bring you down, you have to take it seriously. I mean, it's not healthy to live with those voices in your head. It's not the life any of us want to live, and it takes effort and an energy, just like anything else, to change those voices. And you need to make time and believe that that is going to yield exponential value to your life, to your career, to all of it. But it doesn't just happen because you're recognizing it and because you hope for it, right? You have to do something about it.
Well, see, I would say that, you know, over the years working with lots of folks, and I want to bring in some of the members who are on the phone now or on the Zoom to join us. One of the biggest stumbling blocks that many leaders have is this willingness to take time to invest in themselves, whatever the case may be, whatever the investment itself looks like, in part driven by insecurity, you know, and feeling like their validation comes from the external world. And if I don't do X and Y, then I won't be validated, then I'm a bad person, is sort of the way the psychology works. And Buffett talks a lot about that his advantage has been his inner scorecard. You know, he's not right nor wrong or feels good about something because either the world agrees or disagrees with it. He has an inner scorecard, which is what it sounds like you've been able to develop in using this methodology. Is that?
I mean, there's lots of other people talking and using language like this, but just asking yourself the question that I was mentioning this at a talk earlier today, that, you know, am I the kind of boss that I'd want to work for, right? Am I creating a product that I want to exist in the world?
Yeah.
Am I the kind of friend that I would want to be friends with, that I want my kids to be friends with, I want my kids to work for? Like, asking those questions and asking yourself, like, in the day, if you know, contributed to that ethos, and feeling good about that, and feeling like that is a good day. Like Jerry Colonna's recent book Reboot just talks a lot about, and I've been talking a lot about this because it's very tangible with the team, like doing good work. You know, good work. And so how I've defined doing good work is that integrity around caring that we're doing something that is making society a place we want to live in, including the product we put out, and including the way we develop talent, and including the way we are, you know, being a company in the world. Are we making society one that we want to live in? And if you're doing that work in a good day, like feeling good about that, instead of the one-off milestones that we all know we set, we hit, and we never think about again.
Yeah. And the things we think are going to make us feel better almost never do. The external things, I mean. And you know, I think I shared, well, I don't think I shared this with you, but we were beginning to talk before the call. I think, you know, in the last 2 months, I have really stopped hating myself. I have really let that go, and it's been kind of this unbelievable like moment for me. And I'm very passionate about that for others. But keep going. Looks like you have a few more slides here, and then we can.
I wanted to share. So this is useful, and you can find this online too. But just like when you identify where you are, it's useful to find out if you're willing to shift above the line, because then you take the power back.
Right? Are you open to that possibility?
Are you open? And there have been times when I'm doing my work and I'm like, I'm just not willing to let go of this right now. I'm not willing to let go of being a victim right now. I'm not willing to let go of being the hero right now. I'm just not willing to like see the possibility. So I think just quickly showing you these is useful. So the first thing that is one of the videos you saw is, are you willing to take 100% responsibility for the situation you're in? And this is a doozy, because frankly, we all love taking 100% responsibility when it's something good. But when you feel like a victim and you're like, something bad has happened, it's so natural to, look at the externalities and really see that as the reason. And taking 100% responsibility is asking yourself the question, are you willing to understand how you contributed to this reality that you're frustrated by, that you're angry about, that feels unfair, that feels how it's happening to you. The other side of this willingness to take 100% responsibility is that you shouldn't take more than 100% responsibility. Right? You don't take other people's responsibility. Take away their agency and their power. Sometimes I'll be talking to my coach about, like the team, how the team's feeling about their work or progress we're making, and like whether they really want to be here. And he's like, they're adults, why are you trying to take their responsibility? Why are you trying to assume they don't want to experience hard things with you? Why are you trying to take away that agency for them? So it's not just about, the tendency to not want to take on the responsibility when we're in a situation that we hate. It's also taking too much of the responsibility when something is difficult or hard. One. The second question that's so hard and straightforward, are you willing to let go of being right? So hard.
Oh boy, it sure is. It's so powerful.
Being below the line is really fixated that there is a right and wrong.
Yeah.
And letting go of your story about why you're right, why someone else is wrong, that's a big part of being willing to shift. Are you willing to shift from entitlement to appreciation?
Oh, that's a good one.
I talked a little bit about like recognizing, since we've all gone through insane things, you're also accomplished in your careers, and you've had to endure, unimaginable hard things to get where you are. And since you've experienced the things that you thought were insurmountable and surmounted them, how powerful in moment of said new insurmountable odd to look it in the eye and feel thankful versus entitled that it goes away.
Yeah.
The next question is the one I mentioned I was playing with a lot. I use this one so much with my team, which is, are you willing to see that the opposite of your story might be true? Opposite of something like that is really awful, like, when this happens, I'm gonna have to give up this, or I'm gonna have to let go of this control, or it's gonna lead to the end of this thing I've cared about. And playing with that, like just being open that the opposite of your story might be true. Are you willing to let go of beliefs in scarcity? That, like, if something doesn't get fixed right now, that there's a finite amount of good outcomes for you or for anyone, and instead think of abundance, obviously. Are you willing to see that everyone and everything related to this issue are your allies? And so the people, in my example, like venture capitalists and board members who I felt like were truly like terrorizing me. Truly, like, I'm saying, doing crazy things, like trying to talk directly to my executive team, like almost what I would think of as like
undermining,
right? Like, in the moment, in that example at that time, like, of course I couldn't see them as allies, but in retrospect, that experience again, one of the best things I could have ever had happen to me in my career. So trying to, in the moment, recognize that things that you feel like are really against you and that you're really not feeling like are helping you really could be allies to you. And then this is the last question. There's more, but these are the ones that I think are the most valid. Are you willing to be the resolution that you are seeking regarding the issue? So going back to taking the responsibility, but also like tapping into that agency and power and not waiting for someone else to solve or to open the door to the resolution, but recognizing that you have that power.
Yeah, this is fantastic. All right, we're at about 37 after the hour, and I want, I love that. I want to bring some of you into this conversation. On the Q&A panel, you can type in a question, or you can just text me on the chat panel and let me know. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and see what questions or comments potentially come through. And I'd love to have one or more of you join the conversation here.
I will definitely share the slides with Phil, by the way, so you can have them.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, great. Yeah, I meant to ask you that. Well, you know, I might cold call someone, see how that goes. But I'll wait. I'll wait another moment. See if any. Oh, here we go. Peter. Okay. Peter Nush, let me bring you into the conversation. So I'm going to allow you to talk. Peter, you there? You have to unmute yourself, I think. Or maybe I do. Let's see. No, I think you do. Unmute audio. All right. Well,
I did it.
There you are, Peter.
Thank you. It was asking me a question and I was not successfully answering it.
Okay. All right. Strange. All right. So Peter's at Comcast, Katia, and actually done a number of cool things, including helped to build the Xfinity platform and so on, which is actually a cable box that really works and people like. Imagine that from a cable company. So Peter, ask Katia your question.
Thank you. So I'm assuming by the fact that you're here sharing this with us, this is working for you. It's something you enjoy doing and you found it rewarding. And it sounds like you've started sharing it with your executive team about a year, maybe, if I understood you.
Yes.
Have you noticed that with you and your executive team practicing this perspective, this approach, have you noticed an impact on your larger employee base? Have they started behaving differently because of this?
Yes, I'd say I definitely noticed, like, well, first I noticed like the language permeating the organization, people starting to like use these tools to have more candid conversations where they can still like be productive. So noticing that the way communication is flowing is speeding things up, if that makes sense.
It does. Interesting. Yeah. Is that just sort of your observations, or do you have a measurement tool like employee NPS or something that you use for things?
That's a great question. So, you know, Birchbox has been around for 10 years, and I'd say has been always considered a really good place to work and a place where people are happy. But this year, I actually stood up in front of the company when this result came through, like wept. Highest employee engagement we've ever had, where 98% of people responding to our culture pulse surveys said that they cared about the outcome of the company, which is really like an insane thing to have a group of people who are really vested in the employees in the company's success.
Yeah.
So yes, and I mean, when I say we jumped in engagement, we were always, I think, in the maybe like low 80s, and now like in the 90s. The way people are talking at our all hands meetings is just very different.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
It's not, but it's not a transformation overnight, and I could be a very impatient person. So just so you know, I mean, even you asking me that question is like the first time I'm really reflecting on it. I wouldn't have been able to like tout that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, culture change happens slowly, brick by brick. As a community organizer, I learned that a long time ago. So I imagine, you know, there's criticisms that can be levied against this. Let's see if, oh, Sharon Lebrano, why don't you come join us? So Peter, thank you. I'm going to disable your talking, and then Sharon, I'm going to bring you in. All right, allow to talk. So Sharon, are you there? Hopefully, I don't know. I really prefer it when people can talk live. You can hear their voice and so on. Sharon, are you having trouble with the mic, or was there some questionnaire that Zoom was giving you that Peter was talking about? Okay. Oh, she's back. There we go. Unmute. Sharon? All right. You know what? I'll read your question and then you can jump in. As you said, it's a comment. She said she feels like it's a practical framework for concepts that are similar to Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. Staying present in your body, you are not your thoughts, but the awareness of the thoughts, gratitude. She's just reflecting on, she likes the practicality of this framework to roll out to teams.
Yeah, I think it's easier for companies and for people who don't feel like as touchy-feely about these concepts around, what meditation, tries to teach you in terms of tapping into power. And it does feel, and that was what made me more open to it initially. But however, now I'm reading all the weird shit. If you like Eckhart Tolle, you would really love Joe Dispenza, Becoming Superhuman. It is like one of the most fascinating concepts around vibrating on different frequencies in order to invent this future state. So if you're into it, go, you'll love it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Ah, there we go. We heard Sharon's voice.
Oh, okay, great. You can finally hear me. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was just commenting that this is a great framework because I really do believe in those concepts. And it's always hard to take those that you're practicing and then roll it out to your team. And I appreciate you sharing the videos and the way of thinking about this, because I think it's a great way to kind of bring your team into the awareness of the thoughts and how they're reacting to things. Thank you.
Of course. And I would encourage you, I think honestly, if you're interested in using it, watching the videos like right before a team meeting, or reading these like locating yourself questions that are available online, and I can also send them to Phil, or these like willingness to shift, just like as a quick refresher for language, because the shared language is a very powerful aspect of getting this to take hold. So just for what it's worth, that's a good, easy tip.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. What would you say the most common criticism is of this? Or what do people say who don't seem open to it?
Person that used to be on my team who I love that went somewhere else, and he was very contrarian in every way he thought. And he really, and he's an engineer, and so I'm sure a lot of you have experiences of like engineers could have very different ways of seeing the world. In his case, he was just a very black and white person. Like the notion that there was no right, and that like it wasn't clear who was the hero, who was the victim, the notion that that wouldn't be a fact really was huge. He was hugely critical of thinking that way. But at the same time, like very attracted to the agency piece of it. And I don't think it was as effective as a tool, just like any framework you give your team, if they're for some reason not feeling connected to it, it's not gonna be as useful, but he was still participating in the shared language and still very attracted to feeling like he could create an outcome or like, get value from a situation that he didn't think in moment, would be.
One of the comments here, let's see, we have a couple more, Sharon. Oh, Fred Lee. Okay, because one of the people wrote, seems like it's opiate for the masses when you're not the CEO. Do you have comments on that? I don't know if you've heard anyone, and I asked, that was anonymous. I said, come on, let's have it.
I don't know like an opiate for the masses as in like makes everyone, when you say opiate, you mean that just like washes.
So that quote is actually taken from Karl Marx, who basically said that religion, this is, in the 19th century, was the opiate for the masses. It allowed them to be less critical of the frameworks of the world that suppress them. So I don't know if the person knew that history of the market.
I think that that's such an interesting way of thinking about this. The notion, again, that the frameworks of the world are something you're victim to versus you can create the frameworks of the world is what I think this is about. This is about recognizing like nothing is here to dictate the rules of the game. If you want to play someone else's rules of the game, if that's your preference, great. But if you're feeling friction against someone else's rules or framework, like the whole purpose of this is to recognize your agency in inventing a different outcome. And it first taps into, are you willing to think about things in a different way? Are you willing to let go of a very specific thing that could be a win and be open to something else? It doesn't mean your win isn't the actual outcome, but openness to something else is a part of this.
Yeah.
So this, to me, it feels more, I relate to it more as what Sharon said, it feels less like hocus pocus, like energy and, mindfulness, and it feels more practical to me to be able to ask yourself these questions and recognize the power of how you see a situation, because the notion that there's a situation, that there's a truth, obviously flawed. I mean, there's so much right now scientific commentary that we're experiencing the world in such different ways, like that, we as humans have been programmed to interpret the world as like factual objects, factual light, factual color, factual sense, and that is not even like close to like real. It's like a programming of us. So it's all kind of cut from the cloth of like, is there really a fact? Is there really a truth? And tapping into that as like power versus being terrified that we're all experiencing the world.
All right, we have some more comments, which I'm very happy to say. All right, so Troy Anderson is saying that the fourth commitment, speaking candidly, is a great one. Any questions you were surprised to hear asked candidly?
People ask me, like in our all hands meeting, crazy stuff now. I mean, like they just put me on the spot where like, well, you've said that we're going to evolve the customer experience around our target customer, the everyday beauty consumer. Like, when are you going to have that plan? Right? Like in front of the whole company, somebody will ask that live. And it's such a great opportunity to talk about people's role in creating the future of the company and what the next step is, where they'll be invited to participate, not required to, but invited to, and what is happening now, what conversations are happening now that we're priming to make a decision about what we want to evolve about the product in Q3. So those things come up. I'd say people, one of the weird things, and I guess Jerry Colonna also talks about this, like I found people asking more earnestly, like, how are you?
Like they really wanted to know.
Like they really want to know. Mm-hmm. Like I kind of feel that, they don't have this language, not everybody, like maybe they're feeling like I'm below the line, but like getting curious, like you don't seem like you're as open right now, or you don't seem like you're as curious right now. Like what's going on? So I find that's coming to me more often now.
And are you reactive to that? Or are you able to be, oh.
Gosh, I love it so much. I mean, I don't know how you all feel in your companies and in your meeting rooms, but I want to die inside when I just like feel like people are not engaged. I'm just like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
This like experiment of life, like what are we doing? Why are you here? If you don't have questions, if you don't want to, if you don't want to question a strategy, if you don't want to contribute to it, if you don't want to have these conversations and you're just like taking, something and just ready to put it into 8 steps of execution, I feel really saddened and drained by that. And so I feel so happy and engaged to have that level of conversation and to help people feel like that's welcomed all the time. And I definitely, like I said, I mean, it's so strange that it's manifested itself in like the highest engagement at arguably times when the company's gone through some of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, yeah. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to read these because there's more of them coming and it's faster that way. But Chris Kahn, I was telling you earlier about Mighty Nest. They have a sort of similar model to yours, but focus on green and sustainable products, not on beauty. Have you introduced any of these concepts at the board level?
No, such a good idea, Chris. I'm meeting on March 18th and I'm adding it to the agenda.
Awesome. And then Margaret Brown is at Splunk. You know, they're this big data company. She's asking, is part of this also putting others first? She has two questions. Is part of this practice putting others first and also being your best self?
Good question. You know, part of this practice is recognizing intrinsic value in everybody, I'd say, and intrinsic like power in everybody. So not taking away people's agency, not presupposing that they are a victim to a situation. So there's a lot about recognizing people's worth and abilities and agency. I don't know that I'd say, I've never thought about it in a hierarchy of like first, second. I actually feel there's more, you're gonna start thinking I'm a hippie though.
Aren't you?
Yes, maybe. I think that this is more about creating an environment, like creating a shared experience than you think. I mean, I obviously talked about it so much from my personal experience, but and that can sound selfish. And I find myself saying to the team all the time, like, I don't want to be at a place that is X. Like, I don't feel motivated in Y. And actually feeling like, but I usually start by saying like, I want you to feel like this kind of engagement in something, in a project or something. And then I always say, I want me to feel that, you know? I almost think this permissions letting yourself have preferences, but also acknowledging that living in this way and having shared commitments to live this way creates a better environment for everyone. And if your preference is to be above the line, you're creating a whole different ecosystem for your teams that they benefit from too. But I actually might say, Margaret, that it starts with your preference. Like, because choosing to practice this and choosing to acknowledge your preferences to be above the line is a very self part. I don't know. I could be wrong. I want to think about it more.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then Fred Lee had posted a question. What's an example of a big, what if the opposite is true success story you've had?
Oh.
So maybe it's with the board and the venture capitalists at one point you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, it's all off the record.
Yeah, confidential.
I mean, I'm trying to think of something big and not kind of gloss over the details of it without putting other people, like saying bad things about other people. So when I was in this like the thing that I thought I would never feel grateful for was that experience I alluded to, where my board really went rogue, went behind my back, really, they went to a potential acquirer of the company, they went to my executive team, and I, hated myself. It was humiliating, it was embarrassing. Ultimately, they didn't succeed. Ultimately, like technically, I guess you could say like I won. I wasn't trying to see it as that kind of a game, but even after that, 6 months after that, a year after that, I felt so humiliated and embarrassed and felt that these people were still judging me, still feeling like I was a bad leader, that I had bad intentions, or just was not worthwhile. And I think the shift and asking myself, like, what if the opposite is true? Like, what if the opposite of my story is true? And in some ways that also takes you out of this mode of being so self-important. And so like, is anybody thinking about you anymore?
Yeah, Yes.
Were they really even thinking about you in this, right?
Right.
No, they're just serving themselves. They were just trying, they were scared, they were trying to do something in a way that they thought would serve them. It probably had nothing to do with my particular abilities. And so, you know, it took me a really long time to believe that one, because it just felt like, quote unquote, like the worst thing that had happened in my career. But honestly, now, like the idea that these people are like thinking about me and also even giving them the power where I'm thinking about them, I'm just like, that's so silly. I mean, people are so much more self-interested, and letting go of that story was very powerful. And I did that by playing with this question.
Yeah. I'm going to share just a quick silly thing with you. Early in my career, you know, so I was a community organizer. I didn't know the business world that well. I ended up at HBS and, you know, traveling in business class, which I had never done before. And I was like, early on, I was convinced, you know, this is just, you know, foolish stupidity, but I was convinced that people were looking at me thinking I didn't belong there. When of course, I wasn't even a second in their imagination, right? That was like, well, you know, it's just in almost every situation, when I think somebody is doing something that reflects on me or whatever, it has nothing to do with me.
Exactly right. And by the way, this goes to your personal life. Like, I'll think, you know,
Yeah.
my husband, like, oh, he's like, I don't know, not paying attention or not that engaged with me. And it's like something with me, is he not finding me as like interesting or whatever? And then I'm like, you know, maybe he's just tired. He probably maybe didn't sleep. Like, starting to like play, like, what if the opposite is true? What if there's like nothing to do with you? It is this distraction somewhere else in life, or physical, or, you know, that's very helpful and also playful, because you like start to laugh at yourself. You're like, I am not that important all the time to every person, and that's fun. It's fun. It takes the weight of life off, right? Where you're just, you acknowledge that there's just a lot out there for people to be thinking about and consumed with, and I might not be one of them all the time. So,
yeah. This is great. Well, we're 1 minute to the end. Thank you so much, Katia. Thank you for being open. You know, look, my point in having you here is I've always respected you. I'm eager to hear how this went. And I wanted members of the councils to understand what this is that you're doing. Whether they decide this is for them or something else, that's fine. That's up to them. But I always want to provoke and prod, and especially when someone's willing to be open and vulnerable, and talk about what, you know, themselves as a real human being and what they're trying to do to make a difference in the world. So thank you for that. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm excited to see, and I love this. I do like this concept of above and below the line. I love the simplicity of the language, and, you know, the way it challenged the victim mentality that so many of us can grab onto, and can inadvertently make us the center of the world, which makes it harder to let go of. But once you realize that, you're like, oh yeah, that's so silly. I'm just not that important, as you said. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you for everyone. I think we're going to share the slides, Katia. If that's
I sent them earlier to Charlie, so she
okay.
And I'll find the little like some of the questions I sent her, but I'll find like there's some worksheets out there that I have.
Okay, great. And if people have additional questions, do you mind getting an email or something like that?
No, I'm just Katia at Birchbox if anyone wants to chat.
Okay, wonderful. Thank yous for coming through. Hey, Margaret and Sharon. Yay. Thank you.
Take care.
So good to see you. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.